Hello everybody, I am Rue and this is my cozy corner of booktube, Rue with the Books. This year, one of my reading goals was to get started on the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. I was originally going to read 3 books, but I started a little bit late this year, so I decided instead to just settle for 2. There are 14 books in this series, and if you know any maths at all, you might know that 14 is actually not divisible by 3. So if I read 2 this year and then read 3 every other year until I finish, then I will finish cleanly by the end of the year without having to change plan at all. Maybe it's a silly little thing, but it's nice housekeeping for myself. Since The Wheel of Time is such a colossal series and, in some sense, almost a foundational pillar of modern fantasy, I have decided that I will be reviewing all of the books and, in some sense, documenting my Wheel of Time journey. It's going to be absolutely epic, and I hope that you will stick around and be part of this journey with me. Today's question is, what do you think are the most important modern fantasy series, bar maybe Lord of the Rings, because that's cheating, it's too easy. So, in this video, I will be reviewing The Eye of the World, which is the first book in the Wheel of Time series. Be sure to press the like button to support my content. It's a massive group effort, and pressing the like button, doing your part, helping with those engagement metrics helps a hell of a lot. And if you like books, booktube, and booktube content, be sure to press the subscribe button down below as well so you don't miss one of my weekly uploads. Now, get comfy and grab a beverage of some kind. I'm not messing around today. We are in like the 5th heat wave of the year in the UK. So I have a massive iced Americano to cool me down and energize me, and it's absolutely delicious. And without any further ado, let's give my thoughts on this book. This series kicks off in a small farming village called Edmund's Field. It's a cozy little name and they do cozy little things over there. We see all of the youths that are essentially going to be monumental characters over the course of the series, just living chill and somewhat normal lives. At some point, a traveling merchant comes to town around the time of the harvest festival within this village, and he brings all of the excitement and hubbub alongside it, because essentially around the time that the merchant comes is when things get absolutely wild. While everyone's eyes are on this traveling merchant, a powerful witch arrives on the scene too, with her warder, which is kind of like a bodyguard in normal speak. And this witch is guided by prophecies long foretold, and she's looking for one thing and one thing only: the Dragon Reborn, who is a hero that resurfaces throughout the ages and is locked in an eternal match against the Dark One, who is set to bring ruin and destruction to the world. It's set up in an interesting way that we don't immediately know who the Dragon Reborn is. So alongside this witch, or Moiraine as she is called, we try and piece together who it could be. Which one of the kids is the Dragon Reborn? So yeah, I like that aspect of this. During the time of the harvest festivals, Trollocs arrive to Edmund's Field, and if there's one thing you don't want to do with a Trolloc is it's mess around with it. They're big, they're scary, they're brutish, they don't take prisoners, and they will come for you. And worst of all, they are forces of the Dark One. They bring death and destruction with them, mercilessly attacking the residents of Edmund's Field, while trying to hunt down the Dragon Reborn, just as Moiraine is doing. So already we've got different groups of characters trying to find out who the Dragon Reborn of this age currently is. Fortunately for everyone, the attack is fended off, although perhaps momentarily. You know, there could be waves and waves and waves of Trollocs sent to Edmund's Field. So what Moiraine does is she rounds up the kids and she tells them straight up, cuts to the chase, that these kids are important. and the Trollocs will keep attacking this village and hurting their loved ones so long as they stay there. They essentially heed this warning and set off on their hero's journey. But this journey is fraught with danger and nothing will ever be simple. The important young people, or Teverin as they are called in the series, end up traveling with Moiraine and her warder Lan to Tar Valon, which is the home of the Aes Sedai, the witches, who are the most important and powerful coven of witches within this world. And they're traveling there so that they can remain safe from the Dark One's forces, a temporary respite, and a place where they can train and become more powerful. So, long story short, that is basically the plot of this book. The characters are attacked in the village by the Dark One's forces, and so they decide to get up out of home and run away across half of the world to make it to perhaps the only place within this massive world that they will be safe. I don't think that the overarching plot in this book is particularly great or interesting, and it can be condensed down to the simple sentence of the main characters run away from danger in this book. There isn't really a particularly special end goal for the book, like defeating a certain big bad, or obtaining a powerful relic, or changing the world. These are just examples. However, the danger does follow them, and it leads to plenty of super interesting scenes throughout. So while I think that the overarching plot is fairly weak, Robert Jordan does make the best out of it to develop other aspects of the book. This book is book one in an absolutely colossal series, so you can't really expect an incredible plot to kick it all off. Because usually the focus in a book one of a big series is, developing the characters, the world building, giving you a sense of the scope and scale of everything, at least for fantasy. So we do get good glimpses into the other characters, as well as little teasers of important various factions within this world as well. Now that I've gotten the plot out of the way, what the book is actually about, I would like to talk about the characters, because what would a book be without any characters? I'll tell you what, a big pile of nothing. The major characters in this book are Rand, a shepherd, Perrin, a blacksmith, Matt, who is, well, a mischievous young lad, Nynaeve, a wisdom or witch/healer, that's kind of her profession, Egwene, an aspiring and training wisdom, Moiraine, an Aes Sedai witch, and Lan, her warder. The characters I mentioned up to this point, up to Moiraine, are the young people that have to flee their village to get away from the Dark One's forces. What I liked about them is that they are not entirely helpless at the start of the series. Of course, there's a lot of room for them to grow, but they have a solid foundation to start the series off. Nynaeve and Egwene have actual powers. Perrin has a special power that he develops about halfway into the book, which I won't spoil, but it does come in pretty handy, and it's very interesting, and I like it. Rand is great with a bow and is pretty good at hunting due to all the time he spent with his father learning these skills. Matt is, well, Matt. To be honest, he's a pretty normal dude, but not that useful in a party. He just livens things up and, gets the characters into a lot of trouble. The characters can't always get out of various situations in this book through violence. However, despite their powers and their, the skills they've gotten, as I previously mentioned, sometimes their backs are up against the wall and they have to think their ways out of these situations. These particular situations are some of the most tense in this book, and it felt like my heart was genuinely racing during these. It felt like I was already getting really invested in the characters and how their outcomes will be. And these also just allow the characters to have some of their best moments. We get some really solid character work in this book. Characters have secrets they cannot share with one another at times, even though they are traveling in a party, and it can lead to some tension here and there. There is also a large distrust of the Aes Sedai in this world because of stuff that they have done historically, which adds another element of intrigue into this book. I found myself very curious as to why the Aes Sedai are so hated in so many cities in this world. And because of the scope of the series, that's something I'm going to talk a lot about in these videos. Just little teasers and hints here and there will be thrown in, and it'll all be revealed over the course of the series. So I'm going to have to, keep myself invested and just wait ever so patiently for the answers to be revealed. I really enjoyed the supporting characters in this book too. I won't spoil who they are because I don't want to give everything away, but I will hint that there are some other traveling companions. They made wonderful additions to the party who add a little bit of liveliness and joy. And considering how serious that, the main characters all are, they add just that little bit of oomph that I felt was needed to make the story feel a little bit less serious and tense when necessary. Of course, seriousness and tension certainly have their place, but the characters aren't always in trouble. Sometimes they're just cruising and having, an adventure, and just having a little bit of joy during these situations just makes it feel so much nicer because, characters don't like to be sad and depressed and angry and anxious and all of these things. People like to have a laugh, and people do like to be happy and have a bit of joy. So these characters were a well-needed addition to the cast. These supporting characters, they're definitely hold their own. They're not slackers and they do pull their weight. I really loved them and I enjoyed their presence, and I hope that they will continue to be part of the series and have their own moments. And if not, then, well, I hope we get others that do the same job and do just as good of a job at it. Aside from the secrets and the intrigue, the characters are just simply plain fun to read. They have different interpersonal relationships to one another, which makes sense because there is a lot of history between them up to the point in which the book starts. I also found myself very interested as to how their powers will develop over the course of the series, and the book already introduces some sub-stories for the various characters that will run over several books at a time. I've already read book 2, I will make that plain and clear, review coming soon. But for example, Matt's sub-story runs at least over the first 3 books because the conclusion of his character arc wasn't reached by the end of book 2. So to summarize a little bit, because I've just talked a lot about many things, I really enjoyed the characters in this book. They have very good interpersonal relationships. They tend to hide things from one another because, humans do have secrets, and revealing said secrets can cause tension. And this book begins to set up some sub-stories that will run over the course of several books. For how long this series is, that's a big thing that I hope Robert Jordan will deliver on because I find myself invested in these sub-stories already. Aside from who the characters are and what their powers are or will be, there are also other various factions within this world. People at a surface level can be categorized into where they are from, and they're constantly referred to as such, like aliens or people from Carehead and stuff like that, with certain traits attached to those locations, like people from Edmund's Field are considered stubborn. But there are also certain groups of people. I've already mentioned the Aes Sedai, but there are also the White Cloaks, or sometimes they're called the Children of the Light. For whatever reason, they absolutely hate the Aes Sedai, and there's history between them, and they just don't treat the Aes Sedai very well, and in fact they actively try and hunt them down. So they do say that they are hunting Dark Friends, who are people that have made pacts with the Dark One and work for him in return for everlasting glory. But there seems to be corruption within their ranks. Their decisions and acts don't always seem just, and I'm very curious as to where Robert Jordan will head with those certain characters. So the character stuff in this book is very expansive, and I'm excited to read on, find out about the main characters, the supporting characters, and all of these different factions and what their roles will be over the course of this series. The world building in this book is pretty rich. I found myself quite immersed in the way that the world works as I was reading. The backdrop is classical medieval fantasy, but the level of detail that everything is fleshed out with adds a delicious level of vibrancy to this world. The world is absolutely massive. We see the characters in this book travel across it to reach their destination, and we explore everything that is part of it along the way. The journey takes a long time in page count and actual time within the book, but I really did enjoy everything alongside these characters who are seeing all of these different things for the first time because they've just lived in a small village all of their lives. We encounter various cities. Some are thriving, bustling, filled with different types of people with different careers. Merchants, guards, citizens, nobility. However, some cities are ruined, abandoned, littered with lore and evil relics. We experience forests bustling with life, beautiful plains and large, impressive mountains. There are lots of different environments in this book, and I feel like when you have characters making such a large journey, it's important to include them and make the world feel big and diverse, but also to stop the reader from burning out reading about rabbits and deer for 100, 200, 300 pages. I've gotten this far into the world building section without even talking about the wheel. You know, the book series is called The Wheel of Time, and the wheel is probably the most important aspect of world building within this book and series. Everything happens in a cycle. The Dark One resurfaces, the dragon is reborn, and a fight between good and evil ensues. Various factions within the series have to watch for signs that the wheel drops to know when they need to act wary and when they need to act full stop. Certain factions rise at different times. People in certain cities have their own roles to play. Because things happen in cycles, the prophecies do make sense because an iteration of a big event that may have already happened in the past will happen again. When a cycle ends, the world can be broken and remade, kind of in the image of whoever wins this war. Peace may last for a while before things kick off again. The wheel in this book is spoken of almost like a sentient entity, a phrase you will hear over and over and over again, and let me try to say this without messing it up because it's almost a bit of a tongue twister, is the wheel weaves as the wheel wills, meaning that everything happens for a reason because the wheel requires it. Since the wheel is on this seemingly endless cycle, there are layers upon layers upon layers of history and lore to break into and digest. Heroes from the past alongside their influence, famous battles that have happened, reasons as to why cities may be ruined and abandoned, famous relics that are due to be used again, large-scale events that are due to play out to stop the Dark One. If you like truly immersive lore and exploring an incredibly expansive world over the course of countless books, the feeling of gaining just a little bit more understanding of the great picture over a long period of time, then reading this book and series already feels so incredibly rewarding. Strong world building is one thing that can really keep me hooked within the series. I just love that feeling of the jigsaw just slowly piecing itself together, and it's a testament to how masterful authors can be to actually come up with these ideas and find subtle ways to just unveil everything slowly and methodically. The magic in this series is also a pivotal part of everything, but I enjoy having it as its own section, so that's what I'll talk about next. Not that much is unveiled about the magic system in this book, so I'll keep this section fairly short. We have two forms of the magic system in this book. They look to be different and act in slightly different ways, but because all magic in the series comes from the same source, the one source, they are actually the same, just utilized in slightly different ways. I've talked about Nynaeve and Egwene, who are the wisdoms within Edmund's Field. They basically act as healers and help deal with small issues in which a little bit of magic might be a little bit useful. They call this power reading the wind, which is kind of subtle, but it's a good name because the way in which they use this magic is kind of subtle. The Aes Sedai, on the other hand, are the powerful magic users of this world. It's a soft magic system because there is seemingly very little rules about its use, other than if you use too much of it as a beginner, or with very little mastery, you might end up hurting yourself pretty bad. Aside from that, its use isn't documented super intricately, and neither are there hard rules in an almost Sandersonian fashion. So, the sky's the limit, and anything potentially could happen. Magic in this book feels pretty magical. Excuse the stupid wording there, because there are hardly any rules or limits. The Aes Sedai seemingly can do a hell of a lot. However, as this is the first book with lots of different POVs, we don't actually see it used that much. I'm excited to read on and discover more ways in which they can use their magic and what the limits are, and see it used in these epic battles and showdowns. Hopefully that's what I get. I've already mentioned that the characters in this book are kind of on the back foot for the majority of the book. They're running away from the danger rather than confronting it, at least for the Trollocs. The first major bit of action we get in this book is when the Trollocs attack Edmund's Field, and I enjoyed that segment a lot. We see Rand's dad being an absolute badass, as well as a shift towards Moiraine and what she can do. It's the first grand reveal of the One Power as a big magic system, and it delivers absolutely deliciously. As the characters are on the back foot, running away from danger, there are other things that get in the way. The ruined city I mentioned before is incredibly dangerous due to what has happened there historically. It adds a different element of danger that works incredibly well because, at the surface it looks quite harmless. But lurking around every corner there is danger that you can't even really fathom and understand, and anything you do that kind of goes against its unwritten rules can bring immense danger to everyone, including yourself. In addition to the Trollocs that are chasing them, there are also dark friends hiding amongst the shadows within the various cities that they end up at. I mean, the thing about a dark friend is they're just a person that's kind of affiliated themselves with the Dark One. So you can't tell who really is a dark friend. They're just normal people, and normal people look normal, right? You can't tell one apart from the other apart unless they do something crazy. I think it's a cool element that you can't really tell at first glance whether somebody is evil, and it means that the characters really have to remain vigilant and be super careful of who they kind of end up spending time with. It doesn't always work out, and these sections of the book are some of the most interesting, insightful, and exciting. Robert Jordan does a pretty good job of keeping things exciting throughout the book. There aren't many encounters where the characters are truly tested, but when they are, it always packs a punch and is super fun to read. The pacing in this book is pretty slow. It's probably not for everybody, but I genuinely didn't mind the slow pacing. The series is absolutely colossal, once again, and taking the time to flesh out the characters, the world building, and give us little teasers of the magic as well, and the lore, and the factions, all of these different elements, taking the time with them, all worked in its favor for me. I found myself really immersed in this book, and it really did not take that long to get its hooks right into me. The world is absolutely massive, and with how long it took for the characters to traverse, it felt very fitting. Slowing the pace down to make this journey feel like an actual journey instead of just speeding and blitzing through it, but also giving the characters their first taste of a massive adventure felt completely right, and it was handled perfectly. So, while it is slow, there are plenty of dangerous things they do or dangers they encounter, dramatic things they experience, and plenty of hurdles that they must overcome. It's never easy, and it does feel slow, but I already feel by the end of the book that I was rewarded for my patience. I think you may already be able to tell that by the tone of this video, I actually really enjoyed this book. I started by touching on one of its weaknesses, which is that the plot is pretty uninteresting. I certainly would have loved for the plot to be better, to really elevate those stakes. And a plot does kind of start to rear its head towards the end, but I had no idea where the book was actually planning to go for the majority of it. A stronger plot would have elevated this book even further, but even with a weak plot, it did an absolutely fantastic job of getting me interested to read more. I loved the characters, and I became excited to see where they go next. The world building was also absolutely brilliant in multiple different ways, with the slow drip of lore, the various factions with their different missions, priorities, rivalries, the magic system, which almost seems limitless, at least for the most part. I've already read book 2, so I can't say I'm excited to see where book 2 goes because I've already read it. But I am excited to get the book out get the review out for book 2 so I can unveil my thoughts for where I currently am in the series. The book does feel like it suffers first book syndrome a little bit, where it sacrifices a good plot in exchange for setting up a lot of the pieces that are important and will make the series shine in the future. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but if an author can do all that and encompass it in a strong plot, then it is absolutely masterful. The main takeaway for me is that I felt a little bit scared to start this series. I knew that once I had started it, I had a 14-book commitment ahead of me, so long as I decided to continue. They're not short 200 pages either. However, reading this book certainly put my fears at ease. I enjoyed this book so much, and I felt so incredibly immersed. And I really didn't keep looking at the page count, seeing how much more to the end of the chapter, how much more to the end of the book. And that is the true mark of immersion for me. If I can forget the fact that I'm reading a book and thinking about when it's going to end and just really enjoy the experience, then it's so amazingly good. So now, instead of being scared of that commitment, I'm feeling excited to continue and see where the story actually goes over the course of these 14 entire books. Anyway, I rate this book 4 stars out of 5, 4.5 if you dabble in half stars. I really enjoyed it and it made me so excited to read the next one. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have made it this far, then I hope that a great bard plays at your local tavern today and that you can all dance to a great ditty. If you have made it this far and haven't done so already, please press the like button. It's a group effort and it tells the algorithm that it's worth recommending this video to others. Press the subscribe button too so you don't miss one of my weekly uploads. I do have a second book review coming next week. If you would like to connect with me outside of YouTube, then, well, good news for you. I have links to my Goodreads, my TikTok, my Instagram, and my Storygraph all in the description below. Go check them out. Anyway, until next time, Root out.